Hello, 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 everybody. Good to see you all here. Good to see you, Lily, Swan, Sergio, Sheila, Leia, Liz, George, and Slate. Good to see you all here. Hope you're all having a beautiful week. Hello, Hudson. Good to see you too. So yeah, I hope you're all having a beautiful week. Good to see you all here. Let me switch on over to the screen. Show on the road. Oh, let's not do that. Let's do this instead. There we go. There we go. Little action. Top G, Syad, good to see you all here. Hope you're all doing well. How's everyone week been? Anyone get up to something exciting? Love to hear about your day. I have been very detached from the news recently. And then the only thing that I saw coming up in the news was all the shenanigans going on at like Amazon Games. I literally had a look at some of the recent postings, and oh my god, we've had some people affected in our community as well. My heart goes out to them as well. 30k layoffs, I think. 14,000 in like the game section alone, as they just move away from like all their like MMO stuff, which is freaking bonkers. Oh my god. Remember? Yeah, unfortunately there were layoffs. I think 30k in general, and then 14,000 affected like Amazon Game Studios particularly. Yeah, and for like Leia saying in the chat, the Irvine studio just closed entirely. They laid everyone off. It's done. Just freaking crazy. Any theory why? Money. Right? It's like if you look at some of the stuff that they were doing, and to be fair, I'm not too familiar with like all the stuff that they were putting out. Because my MMO days are over. But like, I think that the latest thing that they were working on was like New World, right? And I think that was like okay in the beginning. But just the game wasn't doing well, right? No, I don't think overhiring. Well, I'm talking specifically about like the game part, right? It's a weird one, right? Because if you have like a good running game and you hire a lot of people and then the game does well, then you didn't technically overhire, right? But I think in this case, like just the game didn't seem to be gaining like popularity, or it wasn't as successful as, you know, it was supposed to be the next WoW killer or whatever, you know, like that old like MMO fantasy where people see, where they thought that I was gonna do better than anticipated. But the game was like, I mean, even from the stuff that I do know about it, it had like serious flaws, and it had like an initial spike where it was really interesting, and then people just like, I don't know, just went back to their old games, right? Which in general is like the issue with like games at large, right? Like if you can't pull them away for longer than they want to go back to their old game, then you're stuck, right? Because then people are going to pick up your game, everything's going to look really good, and then they're just going to go back to Fortnite, Call of Duty, Roblox, like all the big stuff, right? It was actually I referenced this PDF like a lot, but I think his name is Matthew Ball. It's been a while since I brought it up, but he did a fantastic PDF that is like 250 pages long on like all the data of the current games market. And I don't remember the stats correctly, but like the top five games, they take up more than 50% of the market or something like that. It's ridiculous. So if you want to get into that space, if you want to get into those top 5 games, like it's such a hard struggle to get into right now. Probably cheap outsourcing to the AU. No, because I feel like if that would happen, then, well, first of all, it wouldn't be the EU, right? It would be South America or Southeast Asia. Like EU in comparison, if you are moving away your labor, then you just go like all the way and you don't go to like Europe, right? Even though in comparison to like let's say the US, it's like way cheaper to hire people here. But if we're doing that kind of move, might as well go all the way and hire really cheap, right? Maybe we should explore other areas than 3D, other than games. Yeah, feel free to do so. I'm sticking around though. You know? I think it's okay to explore different things, right? But if you were to ask me, there is something very special about making games. And I think that you don't necessarily need to have like a big company backing you up to make a game, right? I think you can make like an interactive experience with a couple of other people and it doesn't have to be AAA quality, right? Just as an option? Yeah, I mean, so especially if you want to do this for a living. So yeah, so from that aspect, I agree, right? It is good to have like a backup and to have something in the back pocket if for just like as a hedge against the instability, right? Which is also basically what I'm doing here right now, right? This is also part of what I love to do, but also part of my own hedge against if the games industry is in rough and tumble, right? So that I have something to fall back on. Which I've always said to everyone, explore other options, as in if you're already making a portfolio piece, right? Well, most of the people here are environment artists, right? Or want to be. If you are making a like an environment, like, you know, it doesn't hurt to then also sell it on the Unreal Engine marketplace, right? And whatever money you make in the beginning, like, it's money that you have in the back pocket, you know, or you can invest, or you can save, or whatever you want to do with that. Yeah. The role model? Well, it's weird. Like, I feel like I'm not even the first wave of people thinking like this. I feel like it was more of a thing with like concept artists. I know a lot of concept artists that I looked at in the beginning that are now doing the similar sort of thing that I'm doing, right? So my inspiration comes from them. Like Tyler Edlin is a good example of this, for example. But yeah, there was like, this stuff was going on in like 2D spaces. I feel way more prevalent than in 3D space. Yeah, it's never a bad thing to have some sort of assurances, right? So it's yeah. So whenever this stuff happens, I know it sucks, but you know, take the emotions in, and then afterwards see what you can practically do about it, right? Being realistic is good, but also social media can be overwhelming when you're seeing all the negatives. Yeah, but honestly, yeah. I mean, so here's a good thing, right? If you are already seeing that social media has a negative effect on your mental health, maybe stop using it. Easier said than done. I don't really use social media anymore. And I think it's been way better. I've been way more productive. I do have LinkedIn, right? So if there's one platform that I kind of use and I scroll on like on a day-to-day basis, it's probably LinkedIn, because I like to engage with people there. Well, I engage with people in DMs there. But yeah. LinkedIn is the only social media that makes me feel anxious. Yeah, I think so. I've used all of them, right? And if there was one platform that I would have stayed in, it was my curated space that I had on Twitter. That was great. I love that. And I kind of did the same thing on LinkedIn. So if I can give everyone a tip, right? Whenever you see something that kind of makes you feel anxious, or it's just like it's just rage bait or something like that, unfollow your connections that you have that engage with those posts, and that's going to make your life so much better. That is what I do. So if I see something on my timeline that I don't agree with, I just boop, boot it off. And that's the way that I curated my Twitter as well. Twitter/X is great in my opinion. It's still great in my opinion. Yeah. So what really put me off from X was that at a certain point they changed the algorithm, and like I said, I had a very curated group of people that I followed, right? Mostly artists and all that kind of stuff. And then it was honestly from like one day to the next where I then went onto it, and then the whole algorithm changed, and I was seeing like just like rage bait, like all that kind of stuff on my feed, and I was like, wait, all the trouble that I went through to like manage my social media is now done. And I was like, okay, then I'm done with this platform, right? Like the thing that I curated the most. What I might do is I might give it another try, because I do kind of miss that space. But to be honest, yeah, if I'm being honest, it would be more for like reach rather than anything else. If I'm being really honest, right? Because I mean, social media in general has been sucking for like years when it comes to like outreach, you know? Do you see ArtStation as social media? Action, this is such a good question. No. ArtStation, purely portfolio. I think so. I was looking at our Beyond Extend ArtStation today actually, and I was thinking about like if we should utilize it more as a social media. Potentially. Right? So as like a company, if you have a space where all the artists are, and it's still the space that people see as like the artist haven, and people still browse it, then we should potentially use more on that. But on my personal account, I only go on it when I want to search up like a specific piece of art, or when I have an update for my portfolio, which is not that much. Because yeah, ArtStation is not a social media website to me. I feel like for artists, is honestly from like the anecdotal evidence that I have from people in our community and the people that I talk to, it honestly induces more anxiety than it does good. Yeah. LinkedIn is sometimes weird though. Yeah, LinkedIn is always weird. I think any platform these days is weird. You just have to curate it, I guess. Let's see. We're getting into some social media stuff again. But let's see. Maddie was actually saying managed to get to sell a 3D printed model for a fair bit to someone. I even managed to paint it for them too. See, that's awesome. And so, Maddie, I'm really interested in this, right? Because you managed to sell a 3D printed model for someone, and then you also painted it for them, right? What kind of sense did that give you? It's a vague question, right? But like, did it give you a sense that you could actually sell your skills in like a meaningful way? Because what happened for me when I sold my first asset pack, it really opened like a different way of looking at my art. That it was this beautiful thing that I would craft over a long period of time, but that there was also value for people to buy it and then learn from it or break it down or use it in the game or whatever, right? It had like additional value. Hmm. But it was perfect for seeing art. Yeah, that's what I miss, honestly. Because I do feel like if I were to compare like my current day LinkedIn to my old school like Twitter, I felt like Twitter was just perfect for like the amount of like artistic feedback that I got. Or like, well, visual feedback that I got. I do miss that. Open the window for a little bit. Let's have a look. Some people are already asking questions. That is amazing. So if you are new here, feel free to ask me any questions about game development, environment art, working in games, all that kind of good stuff. And then we can talk about it. Reddit as Google 2.1, 2.0. Yeah. I mean, I've never used Reddit actually. I feel like Reddit is something that the new kids do. Makes me sound so old. Oh my god. No, but like I never really used Reddit. Like I land on Reddit, right? But I never consciously go to like a subreddit or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Redditors are the worst. Oh my god. Yeah, Reddit is another good one, especially for tinier groups such as the Houdini group. So this is the thing, right? This is what I find really interesting is that we form a preconception about the things that we engage with based with minimal amounts of interactions, right? Um it was it's I love to look at like all this stuff from like a high level objective kind of view, I guess. And then see if I can find those like nuggets, those little subreddits in this case, like those little clusters of like, gold. Because I think that's actually worth doing, you know? Like you connect, for example, an old school way of saying this is like you connected with the right people on Twitter and they would only like the art that you were interested in, and then you would get more on your feed, and then you collect more of those people, and then you start doing the same thing so people engage with you. And it was like this nice communal thing, right? It was cool. It feels like instead of you actually seeing what you curated for yourself, now it is more like algorithmically driven, where like the people that you follow or the channels that you subscribe to, they don't really matter because we shifted away from your subscription model to just your homepage on YouTube, right? Completely different thing. Wow. Okay. let's talk about that in a bit. Let's see. We skipped some questions, so there were some good questions coming in. Action was asking, what game has the most impressive environment art in your opinion? You know what? That's a very good question. But I don't think I can answer that because it's been too long since I've really played games in that way. And that's gonna sound weird, but I feel like it's true. Like for example, I haven't really played like any of the latest games. Like not played Black Myth Wukong, I've not played Elden Ring, I played a little bit of Assassin's Creed, like Shadows. Um Odd, yeah. I'm a little bit out of touch when it comes to um like the impressive visual fidelity of games. Not playing Elden Ring is a crime. Oh, you just wait. Like once we go down this rabbit hole, like there's a bunch more crimes that I'm suspected of. I have not played like a bunch of games that people want me to play, so. But yeah, that's a good question. What is everyone else's favorite game? Be curious to hear everyone else's game. Like if I had to say one, like one that really impressed me. So you had the Assassin's Creed games, and I feel like they were all just like for specific reasons, right? So for example, Assassin's Creed, the one set in Egypt, I can't remember. That one was really impressive for just the amount of like characters that it had on screen, right? Like Origins, yeah. So that was like impressive from like a technical fidelity perspective there. And then you had Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which did like amazing lighting. The lighting effects in that game and the way the cloud shadows work and all that kind of stuff, it's very evocative, very emotional. So yeah, I kind of tend to break it down in that. If there was one winner, I probably had to say like Cyberpunk, you know? Just from like how impressive that was on all accounts, I guess. Let's see, bonk mode. Alejandro, no, don't do this to me. Slate is saying Half-Life. B is saying Doom. Yeah, Doom is a good one. Yeah. The art of AC Valhalla was beautiful beside the characters. I have no idea. Like, I did really enjoy the characters as well. Let's see. Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is a good one. That's the thing. I probably look at like graphical fidelity as like the benchmark there, right? Whereas, for example, yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, like the first one, was beautiful, but in a way that like all the elements were like integrated within each other, right? So it was like very art directed in like a very consistent manner, right? Whereas individually, if you would break like this the individual parts down, they would probably not hold up to other games, but then yeah, if you put them together, they create like this beautiful mixture of things. Recent game Stray. Stray is such a good one. Stray is beautifully lit as well. Very, very emotional, very, very out there, right? So that's a great suggestion. Yeah, I really, really did enjoy Stray. But yeah, that's a good question. I always love to hear about what other people think as well. And then we're going back to Maddie 3D printing stuff because there's a follow-up stuff here. My first time doing something like this and being paid for it was really nice. I had to learn how to paint manually and not with Substance Painter, but it was nice to learn something new too. Yeah, with actual acrylic brushes. Yeah, 100%. I think I am old school when it goes back to games, right? Like Skyrim. It's crazy how far the modding scene actually came. Yeah, or like I downloaded like. I guess the other thing that I played recently was Minecraft with some like really nice mods that kind of added visual fidelity, but didn't ruin the look of the game, right? So like, for example, it had like the blocky shadows, but they were like the blocky clouds, but they were like volumetric, you know? So it's like they elevate the look of the game without destroying the inherent properties of the game, which is really cool. Because sometimes you see those like RTX enabled mods for Minecraft, and it's always like, oh my god, that doesn't feel like Minecraft anymore, right? It's like trying to be something that it's not. Sergio is saying, I played Elden Ring kind of recently, and I think this year left me impressed, and objectively it's the best game I've ever played. Oh, dang. Yeah, I think with those kind of games, I would just get frustrated. I want to play it for like the adventure and the exploration. Well, I've got two issues, right? I will probably get frustrated really quickly. And then secondly, I don't make enough time to play games. That's my real issue. Because even if I get into a game and I want to play it more, then I will prioritize like the work that I have to do before it. So I never really give myself time off to get into it. Yeah. I would rather let my kid play a game than doom scroll TikTok with playtime off. Yeah. Yeah, that is an interesting conversation, right? Like, for the future, it kind of sucks to say, but I feel like games are kind of getting to that point where they're also not great anymore. Because they're filled with microtransactions, you know? We're kind of setting... Oh my god, this is going to go down a rabbit hole. So I'll make it really short, but my opinion on that is that there are a lot of games now that are setting up the next generation up to be more receptive to gambling or something like that. So I feel like we're kind of got off like the wrong track when it comes to games. We kind of lost touch with what games are supposed to be, and now we added like all those mechanics in that will kind of set up the next generation of people that interact with it in the wrong way, I feel. Which is a shame. And not all of them do it, right? So there's still good games out there, and there's still definitely games worth playing. It's just as a general trend, you know? Time zones changed? Yeah, so I said the same thing. I guess it's not time zones, it's like seasonal time zones shifting. Yeah. I think there are laws coming in Europe against gambling in the games. Well, so in the future, I'm going to be moving back to Belgium, and Belgium is one of the only countries that actually banned the sale of loot boxes completely. I think Belgium and the Netherlands are the only ones. I'm gonna sound like a broke record, but have you ever seen the videos on Sora 2? It's scary. No, I'm completely out of touch with like any AI stuff. So I completely missed it. There were some other questions in the chat as well. So beautiful name, Milster is saying, "Hi Timothy, yesterday was my first day in an outsourced studio. I'm so nervous, imposter syndrome kicks in. I take so much time and always afraid to send my whips for feedback. Honestly, it's a part of the whole experience, right? I know that there's like a lot of stress and a lot of like uncertainty and all that kind of stuff. I would honestly see it as a learning experience where the more you send in your stuff for feedback whenever you need it, the better you're gonna get in a shorter amount of time, right? So it's like you almost have to grab this opportunity by the horns and then just see what comes out of it, right? And I know it's scary, I know it's afraid, I know the imposter syndrome kicks in, but sometimes you just have to be like, hey, look, I'm gonna set up like a different set of rules against how I deal with sending feedback in, right? So sometimes when you say like, hey, look, it is good enough, I'm gonna send it in, and then even if you get feedback down the line, you can still adjust it, right? Because also games are iterative. So if you don't send your stuff in until it's like fully done, that means that you wasted more time for the company and yourself as well, right? So it's actually beneficial to send in more of it sooner. Escape from the UK, better time than any. Yeah, I mean, I was here on a skilled worker visa, right? So we have to move out from the UK because I quit my job 2 weeks ago. So that means that like that was the main thing that allowed me to stay here, right? And then if you then quit your job and you don't find another one, then it's kind of, yeah. It's kind of bye-bye time. Let's see. Do we have any more questions? I think there were a couple of them. I was able to have some good conversations with a really impressive artist on Reddit that would have been completely overlooked on other social media networks. Feels more personal. Yeah, I think also when we're going back to social media, right? It's constantly changing. So you kind of have to see where people are going, right? To kind of keep in touch with like the people that you want to keep in touch with. In the beginning, it was really easy because everyone was just on Facebook, right? And I was lucky to be part of that. Whenever you wanted to have feedback, there were Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. And it was all concentrated on this one platform, which was great. But then like the fracturing happened. And then we had like a second wave of fracturing happening with like Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads, and all those other platforms now where they've all splintered. And I feel like for the most part, people seem to be returning to like the platform that they had before. So it's kind of messy. It's just, what is it now? Still the dominant ones are probably still Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, right? Probably, if I would have to guess. Oh, sorry to hear. No. It was my own decision to leave. So nothing to be sorry for. I'm actually happy with the decision. I'm really happy that I did it. Even though it makes, it's the thing. Like I'm a weird person when it comes to this. I will try to give people on this channel or in our community like the best advice that makes like the most logical sense. And then if you kind of look at what I'm doing, sometimes I will just do like the most illogical thing that is like somewhat emotional, you know? Like sometimes I'm like, hey, look, I'm not feeling this. I just want to do something else, you know? And I want to focus on, for example, now that was just a move so that I could focus fully on Beyond Extent, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt too, Shazar. Life's too short to not do what you love. Yeah. And especially when you spend like 8 hours a day on something that you like, but not love, right? And there's still a stark difference between the two. Because, I mean, it's still a job, right? A job is a job. And if you're, I think to a certain degree, I'm one of those people that has like issues with working for someone else, unfortunately. And I can't really sit still. And it will always grind my gears whenever I have to do so, especially in the days when you have to do the stuff that you don't want to do. Even though it is crucial for the project, it's going to help the team, all that kind of stuff, right? Like those days still suck. And if I have to do those days for Beyond Extend, I don't mind, right? Because I'm doing them for myself. And I know that I'm the person setting it and I can see the far distance goal and all that kind of stuff. Where sometimes with games, it gets so complicated and convoluted that it's hard to see that. Let's see. What are some other questions? I think there was another question from Leia, I think. Yeah. So Leia was asking, what do you think of the scope of games? Do you prefer shorter games or games that can be played longer? What will be the trend in the near future? What will be the... Oh, Topji. Oh, sorry. I knew that you had a question. Can you post it again, please? That would be amazing. So Leia is saying, what do you think about the scope of games? Right? Do you prefer shorter games or games that can be played for longer? I feel like I've had the complete spectrum, right? And what I mean by that is that when I was growing up, I got into MMORPGs, which are literally games that are designed to play forever, right? There's no end to it. There's always a grind. Like even the game that I played the most was Tibia. Was a small game called Tibia. And the cool thing about that was that that game had no level cap. You could literally level up endlessly. It was crazy. But there was literally no end to the game. And then now what I'm playing is like almost the polar opposite, where I'm just focused on like really small experiences that I can play. Like the thing that I love the most is that I can pick something up, I can play it for 30 minutes, and then I feel like, okay, I'm done with it again. Cool. And then I just go back to work or I go to sleep or whatever I need to do, right? But I got my relaxation time out of it. It's more, in a weird way, it is more functionally driven than some of the longer games, which are usually like more emotional to me, right? You build an attachment with a game. Let's say like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, even though I didn't play the game, I remember some of the places that I went and I remember where I did. But like the last game that I played, something like Mega Bonk or something like that, I can't even remember like what I did, you know? It is more just like, I don't know, some weird kind of mind-numbing kind of game, if that makes sense. Because like the way that I also see it is that I get a lot of my creative like brain power also from the stuff that I'm doing with Beyond Extend, even though it's not creative, right? But I love putting that creative power in and then I get a lot of fulfillment out. But at the end of the day, I am kind of exhausted, right? And then I just want to play a game that's like easy to pick up and then easy to let down as well. Because with some other games, what you have is that let's say a Witcher 3, right? Fantastic game, but I just don't have like that longevity or that brain power to keep playing it, right? Because there will be a time where I can't play a game for a week, and then I want to get back into The Witcher, but I kind of completely forgot where I was, right? It's really annoying that way. And then what was the other part of your question? Let's see. God, I keep losing track of it. Yeah. So do you prefer shorter games or games that can be played for longer? When I have the time, I do love games that are longer, but for now, I prefer shorter games. And what will be the trend in the near future? So I mean the trend, like the stuff it's weird, right? It's honestly none of them both. Or you could see them as both of them have been combined, right? Because if you look at the stuff that's really, really popular now, it is stuff that is no longer a game, but they're platforms. So if you look at Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, Battlefield is trying to do the same thing with like their maps and Portal and whatever. All those games have been built around this idea that you're no longer playing a game and then letting it down, or like setting it down. They are designed to be like a platform where there's an experience for everyone and everyone gets to build their own experiences, and that all keeps you in that platform, right? So like you can actually look at like Roblox is not a game, right? Like Roblox is a platform that is filled with micro experiences or like really short form games, right? And then if you choose, you could potentially also play like the longer form games, right? But you're still playing Roblox. So I feel like the old school way of thinking, well, the old school way as in like the games that I played, that no longer exists. Like games are now platforms that try to engage you and get more of your timeshare, right? That's the weird space that we're at, especially when it comes to the majority of people, right? And I personally, I'm not a big fan of that. That's why I tend to play way more indie games than I did before. So I think a couple of months ago, I picked up on like Dredge and like all those other like tiny games that are like really highly acclaimed, and I caught up on all of them. Because if I find that that's a more meaningful way to spend my time to get a diverse range of experiences that then fulfill me more than something like, I don't know, a Fortnite or I don't know. Yeah, Schedule 1 I haven't played. Schedule 1 would be an interesting one to look into, because there was another one. I started playing Abiotic Factor, which was actually a pretty interesting game. But then as soon as I kind of figure out the game and what it's trying to do, then I kind of drop it, right? Because I kind of feel like I've seen, I don't know. I feel like I've seen a lot that is going to offer, and I can anticipate what's going to happen in the future. But it's a really good game. I would recommend it. Yeah, see, that's exactly the issue that I have, Swan. Is that at a certain point, I can see where the grind is going to come in, because I've played MMOs before. Those are like the most grindiest games that you can ever have. So I can see the ramp up to it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't need this. Like, I'm just going to not engage with this. Even though I can tell that the game does a really good job of keeping you engaged throughout, it's just not something that I want to engage with. Shazar is saying larger studios and publishers will likely focus on games that are good for quarterly earnings reports. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. They will try to serve like the market that they've helped to create, right? Like the AAA market space, like the blockbuster hits, like the larger studios or publishers. Like they are always going to be focused on making returns on their money, right? Which means for them that they kind of have to make a generic enough game so that it appeals to a bigger share of the market, right? Because if a larger studio makes a niche game, then that is not going to be sustainable for that studio to sustain themselves for the next game, right? Unless they diversify themselves with other games that they have in the making, right? Which is really interesting to see, right? Because you have something like EA. Let's say, can we make it more specific? Because EA does like a bunch of games, right? Let's keep going with EA. Let's say EA with like Battlefield, right? There's like thousands and thousands of people working on that. Like that works for them because they know that like that is going to do well and it's going to increase their market share and blah, 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 right? And then on the opposite spectrum, you have something like, I think we talked about this before, like Obsidian Entertainment, where they decided like, hey, we're not going to dump all of our resources into one game. We are going to actually diversify and we're going to build games along a whole spectrum of it. So they have like really small games like Pentiment. They also have their bigger games like The Outer Worlds 2 or God, that garden survival game with the small kids. I can't remember. But you know what I mean. And those are like two completely different ways of like establishing a studio, right? Grounded, exactly. Thanks, Tobias. And those are like two separate ways of like running a studio at that scale, right? So yeah, there's different choices that get made there. And that's why I was always interested. So when I was at Ubisoft, like they were really open about getting feedback from the people that were in the teams, right? From the developers on the ground. Because it was, I mean, at that scale, it's crazy to manage, right? But I was always interested in having more of those smaller experiences. And like Ubisoft did do them, right? And still continue to do them, but not at the scale where I would expect them to, you know? Like it's almost like the way that I'm seeing it is just try like a whole bunch of innovative but like more niche things with your smaller games, and if one of them like really catches on, you can then use that throughout your bigger titles as well, potentially, right? And it kind of goes that way. I mean, oversimplifying it a lot, but there was something interesting there, I feel. But yeah. So yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, the bigger publishers, like Shazar said, they're gonna do the same thing that they're always gonna do. They're gonna go bigger and bigger and bigger because that is what they get the funding for, right? And then on the opposite spectrum, we're seeing like a massive grassroots kind of like single developer, like smaller developer houses coming up now with hopefully more innovative, but also more risky ventures. Right. Let's switch it on over to the question that Topchi had. It's regarding demo reels that colleagues make you do. Oh, that colleges make you do. I want to know how much a demo reel really matters in the industry, specific for environment art and in general. I have never had a demo reel. And if you want to talk about like in general, where I can see demo reels being applicable, it is something that is pretty common in the VFX industry. Not necessarily in game dev. But I will elaborate on that a little bit, because sometimes what happens is that, let's say, sometimes it's a real struggle to visualize or really sell the stuff that you can do really well. So let's say a tech artist, right? That's really hard to sell in just like visuals, right? So in that case, you could build like a show reel to see what tools you've made and how they react and like what the speed of them is and blah, 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 right? That's the benefit there. Hey, thanks for popping in, Tobias. Good to see you. Have a good evening. So yeah, like that's the main difference that I can see. Because I don't really care. Like, I wouldn't really hold it against you if you have a demo reel, right? But it's also, and I think we're actually going to be talking about this maybe in your work or someone else's work today. But it is, what is the purpose of having a video, right? Because if there's nothing really additional to your still shots, then why are we doing a video in the first place, right? There's no added value. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Would you say that games or VFX is harder to find a job in? That's a good question. So it's hard for me to answer, right? Because it has to be based on like anecdotal reference. I felt for the longest time that VFX jobs were absolutely getting decimated. Like way worse than games. From some people that I talk to, right? And it seems like from like a more higher level, I guess, the whole way that the VFX industry works, where it's more contract based, it's more short developments, that has a lot to do with how people find a job in the industry as well. Whereas if you find a job in games, like it's highly likely that you're going to be working on a project for like a couple of years at least, right? Especially on big AAA games. Where with VFX, it feels like from the outside in that either you work for a house, right, like the mill or something like that, and then you just go from like project to project, But the turnaround time is way quicker, from what I can tell. VFX is very project-based. Yeah, that's what my assumptions are as well. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question, Slate. Which one do you prefer? What is interesting, though, about these two is that they seem to be merging, right? To a certain degree. Where, like, a lot of VFX stuff now is creeping into using Unreal Engine as, like, their preferred mode of rendering. With, like, Digital Studios Virtual Production. That's the name of it. So there seems to be more and more overlap coming between VFX and games, where like the technology is kind of just slowly merging. Don't know to what degree, but yeah, it seems like you can be applicable in like both sides now. Right. Just another reminder for people that are jumping in. Feel free to ask any questions about game dev and stuff, and then we can have a talk about it. Yeah, I do really enjoy. So we're going back to the previous conversation a bit, right? I don't want to open that can of worms again, but I do want to do a video or something like that on where to get exposure, like where to get discovered, like how do you engage with people online effectively or something like that, and how do you find like your way of like engaging with people that matter to you, right? That would be really interesting, especially for like a job search, right? Because job search, I feel, in my opinion, all of it is still the same now, but it feels like under the hood is changing, like what people are looking for. But yeah. Stranger is saying a quick current search: VFX openings 640 in the US versus GameHard 128. Yeah, God, I mean, honestly, it's not a great time to look at GameHard stuff either at this point. I mean, especially in the US, like it feels like, and again, anecdotal stuff and maybe a little bit of data on this one, but yeah, finding a GameHard job in the US in general, it's really, really tough. It's really tough. And then honestly, I see a lot of openings for US studios that are doing fully remote now. Which is interesting. So there is more of an opportunity. There is more of an opportunity for us in Europe to work for an American company now compared to what I was looking at like a couple of years ago, which is interesting. Because on the one end we have the UK, who is kind of just like slowly shutting the influx down and making it somewhat harder for skilled workers to get in and all that kind of stuff. And then you have the opposite spectrum where the US is like, hey, we actually need people to be more affordable, so they're going to look abroad. Which is interesting that those two are happening at the same time, but they're just opposite directions. Hello, Emmett's Art. Good to see ya. Yeah. Yeah, it is a weird time. US time zone with the European salary, I assume? No, I don't think so. Because, well, if you're smart, not, right? Because let's do this exercise, right? So, let's say because from like the outside, what that US company is trying to do is trying to decrease the amount that they have to pay to get their workers in, right? So they want to, let's say, I don't know the numbers for the US, but let's say 150,000, right? For like a senior position like artist. I've seen some of those numbers floating around, especially in like California and stuff, right? Let's say you are paying that for like a senior developer. You can easily find senior quality talent for less than 100. easily in Europe. So even if you say, even if you say like, hey, look, I'm looking for like a 30% increase on my wage, and let's say, I don't know, let's say I want to earn like 80,000. Like, that US company is gonna be like, oh my god, that is like almost half of what we paid like a senior talent person before. So right, it's about finding that balance and finding the gap between what they pay that person before, and then looking at like where you come in at the bottom and how much wiggle room you have to go up, right? Because I mean, according to the data, right? So let's dive into the data that I have. Which reminds me, I still need to make this public at some point. Let's switch it on over. Is that the right screen? It is the right screen. So, no, not that one. There we go. Okay. So, let's let this load in for a little bit. Look here, average pay for a senior, like on between like all the different, this is between like all the different disciplines, right? 60K. Which is crazy, right? So I can, let's say I get paid 60K, which is the average. I can go to like an American company and say like, hey, look, I want to earn like 80K. And I get like a serious pay bump. And then they get like a massive discount on the talent that they're looking for, right? So you could actually like really effectively like negotiate on like a contract like that, because you still get like a massive uprise, right? A lot of juniors' jobs are getting completely overseas or with AI now. Oh, you're still talking about the VFX stuff, because yeah, like in games, I'm not seeing that. But yeah, back to the salary comparison, right? Like that means that there's like a huge gap between like the opportunity that you can have working for like a US company, and they get like a massive benefit for that too, right? So there's like a really interesting gap there. And I know people that are working for like a US company now, and they get paid way more than I've ever done. Let's see. We actually see something. I don't think I've fully finished it yet. Let's see. So senior, yeah, it seems like the senior data is somewhere around like, let's say 60K pounds, right? So that means that there's like a huge opportunity there, which is amazing. But you just have to find them, right? There's a whole bunch of like legal caveats and all that kind of stuff in there, but there's opportunity there. Yeah, average is 120K or 140K for seniors. See, if you say that number in like Europe, it doesn't matter where you live really. Maybe apart from London, maybe that is like crazy. Like I've never come close to like 100K. No, yeah, no way, no way. Like I feel like honestly, like the way that I always explain it is that the entry level, like a junior in the US working in a game studio, it's probably likely that they've always been paid more than I've ever had. Topsy is saying, sorry for the late reply. The reason why I asked for the demo reels is because oh yeah, the market difference is crazy when we're talking about these salaries. It's freaking huge. That's why even if you stay local, right? If you are going to like, let's say London, or if you're staying in like where I am now, like Leamington Spa, you will have to ask for a completely different compensation package, because otherwise the stuff that you get here is not going to work for London. Just doesn't. And then we're talking about the same country, right? So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. Sorry, Topsy was saying, sorry for the late reply. The reason I asked about the demo reels, because in my college, it was said your polished stuff is on a demo reel and unpolished stuff is on ArtStation. So I know that's not true. It's unfortunate college puts more focus on the demo reel, but they do it as a showcase for all to watch. I mean, yeah, it's not a bad thing if like the school does some extra promotion for you if you have a demo reel, right? And you could put it on your ArtStation. But the fact that people say that like your unpolished stuff is on ArtStation is fucking ridiculous. That is stupid. The way that I look at it, London is a different country to the UK. Yeah, probably for most people, yeah. In the UK, 60 plus would have gone in tax for a salary of 120k. 60%? I don't think that's true. I mean, I'm going to Belgium, and that's like one of the most heavily taxed countries, you know? Let's see. Let's have a look. I am not too sure, so we are just gonna find out. So let's say... Let's say we are making like 120,000. From 120,000, you get to keep 76,000. So you pay like 40k in taxes. So it's the opposite, right? Like you get to keep like 70% of what that is. But it's a good reminder. It's a good reminder to always check that though, because that has a huge impact. So if you want to know some of the sites that I use, right? I use these salary calculators. Joe. 40k in taxes on 120k is so ridiculous. I'm going to Belgium, where tax is like 52% or something like that. It's fucking ridiculous. Progressive tax, but still. It's what you get back for it, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't mind like paying taxes when you actually get like a lot of like public good and all that kind of stuff for it back. But that's another conversation entirely, right? Slate is saying, I think studios should build their HQ in the UAE. There's literally no tax there. Well, so I think they're not building their HQ there, right? But what I can see is that a lot of the funding is now coming from the UAE and Saudi Arabia and all those kind of countries, right? So I wouldn't be surprised that like what your traditional Western companies are doing now is leaning more into companies from the Middle East. Because that seems that that is the market that is growing, right? Plus also cheap labor, right? Comparatively. But yeah. So I was saying, some of the websites that I use, right? Like these tax calculators, I'll show you again. So every country kind of has like their own websites like this, right? And it's gonna sound super boring, but it's actually really helpful. So let's switch on over. So for example, this is my take-home tax calculator for the UK, and you can just literally type in like, hey, look, if I make like 120,000, what do I get back? What goes to national insurance? What goes to taxes? All that kind of stuff, right? Every country has the same things. What I also do love to use is a site called Numbeo, which allows you to compare cost of living, which is actually really interesting. So you can just say like, hey, look, currently I live in Leamington in the UK. So I want to compare that to, let's say, London in the UK. Cool, then we're just going to ignore this. And now we can see that on averages, like, cost of living is 26% lower than in London. If we include rent, Leamington is almost 40% lower than in London. And you can actually see like a whole breakdown of like all the prices and compare the two. Obviously, one thing that I will say here is look at these numbers. These are like the amount of contributions in the last 12 months. 18 contributions is not too great, but it at least gives you some like measure point, right? America pays so much to the living cost though, right? In the UK, things cost a lot without the big salary, which makes everything feels worse. Well, so again, we could potentially use something like this, right? So if let's say we go back and we go to Leamington and then let's say, I don't know, California? Also living in California. Oh, sorry, forgot to compare. So we can then just do like Leamington. And then again, this is an average, right? But it then says you would need around like 4,500 in California to maintain the same standard of living that you have with 4,200 in Leamington Spa, right? Assuming you rent in both cities. So obviously, this is just like a very basic, a basic comparison tool, right? It depends on the amount of like the health insurance that you have, like what provider, all that kind of stuff comes on top of it, right? So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But I find this tool like really interesting to just compare, to kind of see like, hey, what is the rent per month, you know? And kind of comparing the two. Where's California MD? Is that the California? There's no way, right? Oh, I guess. Yeah. You get the point. But yeah, some of these sites are like really, really interesting to look into. And just give yourself like a quick comparison. Really helpful for that stuff. But yeah, this is honestly like the most boring thing that I talked about for a while. That's California, Maryland. Yeah, I was wondering why it was so cheap. Because I guess Santa Monica, right? But let's compare like, I don't know, let's say Santa Monica compared to Leamington Spa. Have a look. Yeah, this makes more sense. So yeah, 30% higher. Rent prices are like 150% higher. So this starts to make more sense, right? Yeah, still a cool tool though. A cool tool to use. Some bread. It's so interesting to compare these. But I'm also like secretly a data nerd, so hey. Anyway, let's switch it back. Let's see. Leia was asking, how come there are countries in Europe that establish themselves as video game hotspots? I assume it has something to do with being tech centers and having lower taxation. What do you think? Well, it's municipalities or like towns like incentivizing companies to come over there, right? So for example, if you have like a science center that is like an investment. So to elaborate a little bit, we had in Cambridge, we had like the Cambridge Science Park, I think that's what it's called. And it's basically just a connection of like tech firms, right? And that's where Frontier was established as well. And I think in that case, what the town does is obviously they invest in that park, they build out the park, blah, 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 blah. And then that in turn gives them a return on their money by then attracting like more talent and more people to actually settle in Cambridge and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, it's like probably something with lower taxation or even even something with grants, right? Where the government can actually give you grants if you settle there and all that kind of stuff to incentivize certain things. But in general, it is about incentives, right? So there are certain towns that will incentivize studios or people to come there based on certain needs that they have or what they want to attract, right? That's why I currently live in Royal Leamington Spa, because they set it up as like a game hub, right? Like, sort of cringily known as Silicon Spa, because it was trying to mimic like Silicon Valley because we had so much tech stuff around, which for a town that is like the size of like my relative small hometown, that's kind of crazy that there's so many tech things happening here. But yeah. Yeah, all right. But let's actually dive into some feedback, shall we? We're gonna switch it on over. So if you are here for feedback, you know what to do. Raise your hands if you want to go first, and we'll dive into it. Right, Leia's first. Leia, Slate, and Sergio. Right, I haven't done anything. Oh, wait, before we do this, let me give you actually a sneak peek into something. Because yeah, I've been making some good progress, and I kind of want to show this off. So for the select few people that are here, let me show you some of the progress I've been making on the course as well, and then we'll dive into the feedback. So currently we're adding more lessons. There's a bunch more lessons that are built up in the background, but I kind of just wanted to show some of the lessons that we have been working on. So we have just we're getting close to completing the lesson about post-processing. So this will be a lesson that explains like all about the post-processing volume, what a tone mapper is, anti-aliasing, exposure, all that kind of good stuff. From a good friend of mine, Angelo, who's been helping us like build this content, which is really, really cool. I just wanted to show this off. We are also working on like all these videos as well, but we still need to go through and edit all of them too. So all of this is going to be accompanied by like all these tutorials as well that will explain everything about what the current topic is about. And then let's see if there's another one. This one I'm working on, so this might be, yeah, this is a collaboration between myself and Luis Mesquita. We're kind of, you can see I'm still doing like all the edit for the images, but we're gonna get them all edited. And this would be like an introduction to Unreal, teaching you how to go through the viewport, adding in assets and all that kind of stuff. And then maybe, what was another one? Let me see. I think I'll keep it there for now, right? Because there's like a bunch of stuff that is still in process, but I just wanted to give you like a sneak peek and kind of give people, yeah, just like a look of all the work that's gone on in the background. And to give some like extra context, I'm currently working on the images for the intro to Unreal Engine. And then we have a massive one, like an absolutely massive amount of content that is coming for foliage. Teaching you how to make grass, trees, bushes, how to create like nice wind movement, how to create your own leaf atlases. All that kind of stuff is currently being in the works, and it's literally, I think I said this last time, we're currently working our way through like 4 to 5 hours of content that we're trying to get edited up nice. So that's going to be really, really cool to see, to have that on the Academy website as well. But yeah, I will do more updates like this in the future. We will also be more transparent as well in the Discord, and we'll also start sending emails and all that kind of stuff, because we're getting to a point where we have so much cool content that we need to kind of get into the habit of sharing more of it as well. So yeah, I just really wanted to show that. And then yeah, more on that in the future. A little sneak peek of what we've been working on. Right. Oh, and I'm so happy that I can dedicate like my full attention to it now. It's gonna be so good. Right, switching it on over. Let's have a look at some Whip Wednesday stuff. So, first question here from Leia is, how would you go about making moss clumps without relying too much on opacity maps? I want to create actual geometry, but my previous tries always looked weird. Like a weird blob with a moss texture and moss cards on top. I've heard about fuzzy shading and substrate, but how would you go about creating assets with multiple layers, such as moss or hay? Well, so let's assume what would be like a great area. So let's assume like this rooftop, right? If we want to add moss on it, then you would almost have to have like some assets, right, to give you volume. Let's say this is like some really thick like moss, right? And this would always be assets or meshes to create some actual volume, right? It's going to look really good. What we then need to do though is we need to go in and we need to make sure that it also blends with the planks, right? So we can, in most cases, honestly, just use the tileable that we use for the moss, and then make sure that we like vertex paint that in to kind of give us like a nice transition between the two. And that, in essence, is it, right? When you want to have like nice looking, you want to get that real fluffy looking, almost Death Stranding look, you will have to use opacity masks for like little strands, right? There's no way around it, really. But I will say that that's optional. You can make decent looking moss without having the need to add those individual strands on it. And I would just use them sparingly where needed. So, I don't know, let's say like this is your moss clump. I would then just like scatter like a bunch of these cards on top of it. Right? But I would only do that in places that are going to be really visible to the player, right? So for example, this, because it's actually going to be breaking up the silhouette, that might be useful here. And then on other areas where you just want to have, I don't know, let's say there's like some rocks here with like a little bit of moss next to it. Those assets are going to be less important because they're not going to be as in your face, right? But there's no way to, if you want to make like the sexiest looking moss ever, you're going to need those opacity mask like little strands on top of it. That's just the way that's going to be. There's only so much you can do with just a tileable, right? You mentioned it already. Get some fuzzy shading on there as well. I'm not too sure about substrate. We actually have a really cool workshop coming up that will teach us all about substrate in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. But yeah, the fuzzy shading node is gonna help get you at least a little bit of the visuals already there. But it's honestly, if I were to keep it like pretty generic, like general advice, is it needs to be a combination of a really good texture with a really good, like really noisy texture, and then you get the main shapes from just the geometry that you're going to be using, right? Right. So that's question number one. Question number two is where should I add detail variation in the tower? I've been using vertex paint to create material variety in both the main tower and the edge stones, and in next week I plan to add a plaster mask around entrances and transitions. Is there something I should consider implementing before starting with decals? So I would say that like you have like one layer of variation, which is okay, but I would honestly expect more layers of variation. So, for example, now you have let's say layer 1 is plaster, right? And then layer 2 is the stones. Right? But what I actually also want to see is maybe we can add another stone variation. And then also another layer to potentially help us with doing some transitions and kind of give us a feel of what the bottom of this tower could be looking like, right? Like maybe this is dirt, something like that. This could also be done with decals, right? I find it easier to get like a base generic layer done with vertex paint instead. And then you could kind of use this dirt base to, I don't know, highlight some edges or get some pockets where it's like dirty as well. Because a lot of the layering that you're doing is like pretty subtle. You know, it's like if we look at it from this distance, it could almost be just like one tileable. Try to get like a little bit more visual interest between them. Right. Will agree, will do. Awesome. And then this stuff is gonna look really cool. That's an example from Kingdom Come. I think, yeah, that's really gonna sell the whole thing as well. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it. Good little update for this week. Thank you for sharing your work, Leia. Mesh decals around the edges. Shajar is saying, yeah, I think that was gonna be like the next step by using this example, right? That is just once you have like those nice like decals around like the frames, I think that's also gonna add a lot, especially around like the insets. And then you could honestly like use those decals as well to enhance some of the blending between the stones too. There's a little bit of mortar in between the two. That could be cool. Right. Thanks, Leia. Appreciate it. Next up, we got Slate. We're starting with people that I didn't get to. Let's see. So, question 1. We got some technical questions. Sounds good. Let's dive in. So the unique looking building is hard to nail down with a modular kit, so I had to resort to a filler piece to align the walls because one side was too short. Is it okay, or is there a better approach? So you have like a 0.5. And a 4, 2, that's gonna be a 4. Well, so with these kind of approaches, right? Like my main question is, if we zoom out a little bit, why modular? Right? That's like the main question that I have just looking at this in the beginning. Why build a modular piece like this in the first place? Yeah, that would be interesting to know the answer to. Because the reason why I asked that question is because we're making one building. I thought a non-modular building would be bad for portfolio. Okay, that's interesting. I don't think it's necessarily bad for your portfolio, but what I would think is that Shazar saying Naughty Dog entered the chat. What I would say though is modularity serves a function, right? And that function is to build at scale in an easy way by using repetitive modules, right? But if we're just doing one building, then it's kind of, I don't know what the point is to use a modular way of working, right? Long way of saying that honestly, you can just like use like make the entire building as like one piece, right? And then using the benefit of not having to be constrained by like the modular building, you can then add like a lot of interesting, unique detail to it, right? Maybe, I don't know. Mafia, the old country is mostly unique. Yeah, I would be curious. I would be curious to dive into that. Because I would be interested to see how they do it. But yeah, like for this, it doesn't matter if it's modular or unique, right? Like I would go with a modular with a unique way, just because it is just way easier to execute, right? And then what I would do for your portfolio, right? So we're not talking about this project. We're talking maybe the next project could be something that is built around modularity. So let's say like an easy thing could be like scaffolding, right? If your scene needs a lot of scaffolding and you need flexibility, that is really easy to build a modular kit around, right? Or like, I don't know, like a shanty town or something like that, where you don't want to build every shanty town thing unique. You just make a kit of generic stuff that you can then cobble together into like a shanty town, right? Liz is saying, I used to think the same about modularity. This might be a common thought. So I don't think, so the general idea of your portfolio not showing modularity, right? Like I can get behind that. It is a good skill to show that you can think in a modular way and I can build a modular kit. But I think, and I would actually be curious to know how other professionals in the field think about this. But if I see a unique building that is made in, if I see a unique building that is made in a modular way, then immediately what I'm thinking is, okay, why did you use this workflow? Because this doesn't match the reality of building something like this, right? That's where I go, which is also the thing that we're talking about, right? I'm pretty sure I will. It's basically in general, right? Like we're trying to pick the right workflow for the right thing that we're building, right? I'm pretty sure I will do modular assets, but not for this building. Yeah. Yeah, and that's it, right? Like if your project doesn't require you to build modularity or like build modular, then you don't have to do it. And then the next thing that requires you to build in a modular way, you then go crazy with the modularity, right? Because just trying to stuff one workflow into a piece, it needs to be done in a way that matches. So for example, I mean, in this case, Slate, let's say because you're going with an abandoned feel, right? Let's say that it was abandoned right after people started construction on it, right? And again, the idea of the scaffolding coming back, then the scaffolding would be modular because you're going to be using that all over the place. So that would be a way to inject modularity into the scene without having to redo a bunch of stuff, for example. So yeah, that is going to make it like 1,000 times easier. Just to highlight what you were thinking though, when it comes to your modular thinking, is when you want to add a piece like this, doing a unique filler is totally fine, right? So your thought process is actually pretty good. If something is so complex and we're kind of going off grid, this would honestly be more annoying to build than anything else. The only benefit that we would kind of get about making this modular is, let's say I want to then add a corridor here for some reason, right? Or maybe here, or maybe here. Let's say this is a Subnautica base, right? Where we have to add like all these like corridors to like the extensions. Then we need to think in a different modular way, right? But modularity usually serves a purpose. So in this case, totally fine to have a unique filler. So yeah. Zara saying modularity would be good to show within a scene with repetitive architectural elements where modeling them time and time again would be silly. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Something where your workflow actually allows you to get the benefit out of the workflow that you use, right? Would you recommend me sticking to this or change it to be unique? Well, honestly, it's really easy to, at this point, just make it unique and then build it up from that point, right? Because even if we strip it out, right? Like, I mean, you have some modularity coming in. Yeah. It's all modular with one odd piece. Oh no, like that. I'm not even thinking about that one odd piece. That's like totally fine. It's just more about like the portfolio presentation, right? I guess it couldn't hurt if you want to continue doing it in a modular way. I was just trying to think through the motions, right? Yeah, you could keep doing it as like a modular way, but like usually it is to build something at scale, right? I was just thinking about it in a way where could it hurt to have that on your portfolio? But that's kind of difficult to anticipate, honestly. So it's yeah. Yeah, I know. Your second question is about UV, right? And that's where it gets really annoying. Whereas if you just do this as a unique thing, it's super easy, right? So that is honestly the main benefit of just simplifying things down and making them more functional to what you want to be doing, right? So in this case, I would honestly say that for your second part, so well, for your first part is, let's go with unique then. And that's going to solve your second question as well, right? Because your second question was, do you UV tiles correctly based on each piece individually before kit bashing, or kit bash every piece to form the building, then UV tile them? So this is where we get into the annoying thing, right? This is a 4x4 wall. You're almost looking at like the intersections of the other walls, and you're trying to anticipate what the smallest piece is going to be, and then you're kind of building around that, right? Or hiding the seams. Because let's say, for example, our textile density is, or like our textures are meant to be scaled at like 2x2, right? So that means that in this case, we can tile it 4 times on this wall, which means that if we put them close to each other, the tiling is going to be absolutely perfect, right? Cool. Now, we have an issue. What if we decide to introduce like a 1 meter piece into the mix? Because now our texture is made to be like at a higher resolution, right? So at this point, or like at a higher scale. So at this case, we introduce a seam here with another piece that's going to be attached to it. What we need to do then is we either need to go smaller with the texture, right, and tile it more, potentially, or we need to be smart and maybe we can use one of these beams to cap off the seam that we have introduced here, right? So then it becomes about like, okay, we are building a puzzle that on assembly we might need to build in a specific way to avoid seeing those things. And obviously there's a couple of examples, like a couple of ways that we can go about this, right? Ideally, the first thing we need to do is, like we said, match the texture size. Right, so the texture size is the first thing that I explained. Number two, like the thing is hide the seams with another mesh. That can also be done. What we can also do is we can do it on a texture basis as well. So hide seams with a texture. So for example, if we have a second layer at a different scale, and then we paint on this section and then also paint on this section, so that they both have, like, I don't know, let's say a plaster on them. That's also a way to reduce the visibility of the seams, right? Oh, sorry, I just realized that the text is kind of blocking it. So there are a couple of options. But yeah. That's where planning comes in, and that's also why it becomes difficult to manage a modular kit if you've kind of built it in a way and then we want to add pieces to it, right? It becomes pretty difficult. But there are options. There are always options. But yeah. So because you also asked, like, a second part of your question is, I'm thinking about manually extruding corrugated metal parts for optimal geo count. Would that be painful to do if I had to do it for every wall correct? What you would be doing is, especially in that case, if you're actually going to add geo, you want that geo, the scale and the proportions to be equal, right? That's where textile density comes in, so that we can keep it all at the same resolution. But you definitely don't want to be skewing your UVs or doing something like that, right? Because sometimes textures are a little bit more forgivable, so that you can skew or move your UVs in such a way that you can kind of squish them into it, right? Let's say a very generic plaster, you're not going to see the scaling as much as your metal strips, right? So that could also be an option, but this brings some caveats, right? And then you're saying the metal will be extruded, so the only way to hide the seams is by adding a piece on top. Yeah, in that case, you're pretty lucky, right? Because they kind of have like built-in lips that kind of go over each other. So you could have like a strip that is just one of those lips and then hide up the seam that way. That's an easy thing to do, you know, and it's not gonna look that weird necessarily. So yeah. You got options, Slate. You got options. Yeah. Choice is up to you. And this is honestly the difficult part, right? Like, do I use modularity? Do I still want to do it and then show it on my portfolio, even though it's probably not the best showcase for a modular kit necessarily? But it can definitely add to your skill set, right? And make you more hireable. So there's a lot of stuff to balance in there. Yeah. Thanks, Slate. Appreciate the questions. Yeah, and the visibility on this thing too. Liz is saying John Artolano has a workshop on Beyond Extend for modularity. It's really good. Oh, thanks, Liz. Yeah, honestly surprised that is like one of the main ones that is still really doing well. Getting consistent people reacting and viewing it. So that's amazing. I think modularity is best for buildings like apartments, etc. Something as simple as a cube. Not necessarily. You can make like really complex modularity. I love playing around with, for example, if you have like a shantytown kit, right? Like you can make it super modular, where you could make like basically any sort of shape and any sort of thing out of that kit. It's really satisfying if you have a modular kit that works really well. I actually talked to the person who who was involved with one of my favorite examples of modularity. Let's see, G-Lock, I think? Is that it? Q-Lock? G-Lock? Damn it, I'm not gonna find this, huh? Sorry, before a corner piece, does it have to be a meter wide or can it be 0.5 like I did? Well, so it comes with all the caveats that we did before, right? If you make it smaller, then you're gonna have to clear up the seams and all that kind of stuff. It can be smaller than 1 meter, but I wouldn't go smaller than 0.5 because a way to think about this is if you build a modular kit, people are gonna set their grid snapping section like settings to the lowest setting, right? So if you tell me that this is a kit where I'm gonna be having to fiddle around with like 0.5 meter bits, that's already pretty annoying. But it's more from like a usability perspective and like a production cycle, right? So for you, it doesn't really matter that much. Let's see. We get bashed a lot in work with kits that we've made. We get a lot of mileage out of the most of random things. Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah. You can do so much cool stuff with like kit bashing, like pre-existing stuff. It's amazing. I love it. Like honestly, that's the majority of stuff that I do as well. Like just looking at, in general, looking at the resources that are already available and trying to make new stuff out of it. There's so much that you can do. There's so much cool stuff that you can do. Especially when you have people like a material artist dedicated to like making new stuff. Like it's really cool. Well, I'm not gonna find this example, but oh well. Anyway, let's ignore that then. Let's keep it on moving. Who was next? Oh, I think we had a question as well. I think Justine has a question. Sorry for skipping your question, Justine. So for modular wall pieces such as these that you plan to vertex paint with different materials, how many subdivisions should a 2x2 wall be for best vertex painting? Honestly, you don't need much. Just like, I feel like 0.5 meters, just having like a vertex point already is good. Like that is pretty dense. Because you're not relying on just the raw vertex data, right? You want to blend it with like a height mask and all that kind of stuff so that you get like sweet transitions. But like a vertex point like every 0.5 meters is going to give you great density already. And let's see, I think Leia pointed out as well. If you go for nanite for your portfolio project, you can go higher in density as long as your raster mode is blue. Nanite advanced mode should be good. Yeah, I feel like nanite goes into like a different dimension, right? Because nanite by itself is going to have enough density anyway. I heard every 0.5. Honestly, you can go lower if you want to. It just, yeah. In a production environment, it just depends on like how good the blending is between materials, right? Like sometimes you have to add more. I always followed 1 sub D for every 100 centimeters. Yeah. Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm an artist. I don't follow rules like this. Even though I said that I was like a data nerd before. I feel like I just look at like sort of roughly what is a good density, and I feel like from just like feeling, not measuring it, that I feel like I'm sitting around like a 0.5 meter. And the benefit of this is that you don't have to be consistent with it, right? Which is the beauty. So for example, what you could do, let's take this wall as an example, right? Let's take this little wall piece. Let's say you could have like pretty equal subdivisions going all the way around. Let's see. It's divided in the middle. Divide it again. But then what you could do is like, hey, I want to have like really crisp like vertex information on the edges. You can just add like an edge here, you know? And now I can be way more specific with data that I add on like this line, right? Because we're going to have lines going this way as well. And that's a benefit. Now I can be like pretty detailed with stuff over here where I have less density in the middle. Right? So I can kind of choose where I want my density to be, right? I have that flexibility with just like these random lines. I might even just be like, hey, look, I'm gonna cut out even more of this. So I might just be, I don't need those separations because the main body, I don't need that many subdivisions there, you know? Which is cool. It doesn't have to be uniform. It's 2 meters, by the way, if that helps. Oh, thanks, TopG. Stranger is saying, kind of stuck from uni. At times it feels overkill, but I feel weird if I don't follow it. Like I broke a cardinal rule. Yeah, I get it. Like it's really hard to unlearn the things that you learned. An example for this from my side was when I was working on Planet Coaster, we had to keep everything super, super, super low poly, right? And then going up to like another AAA game where I didn't have to do that anymore, I was still making stuff that was like really low poly. Like a cylinder, it was honestly rare that we had a cylinder. So for the most time, what I was doing for the cylinder, I was actually using like a rotated cube. Right? Because we couldn't afford like having 8 sides or 6 sides. It had to be like just 4 for like a cylinder that was that small on the screen. So yeah, thanks for the demo. No worries, no worries. Let's see, who was next? So we had Slate, Sergio. Sergio is probably going to be... I made some notes here actually this time around, Sergio. Because you were asking for some polish, right? Because you wanna publish this. Is there anything you feel like that could use more polishing? So I added a couple of things. What I really felt like was I want to see like more decals, like more rust, more leaks, more blending between surfaces. You know, like if you have like a window, I kind of want to see that like water has been running down this facade for like ages, you know? And the same thing with like any sort of metal, like I kind of want to see like grimy rust stuff coming out of it, right? Same here. Like there's so many spaces where if you just have like 1 or 2 decals for rust, you can just like plaster that all over the place. So that's one. Some of the signs, I'm just randomly naming stuff, right? Like some of the signs here, they feel too clean and too readable. I would expect them to be like even more destroyed, you know? And then number 3 here is more material breakup of some of these bigger surfaces. Now that we have like a better view on like what the materials look like, now we can pick specific spots and be like, okay, I want this area to be like a little bit more broken up or something, right? We can do that with decals, we can do it with vertex paint, whatever. But especially some of the emptier areas would be nice to have specific breakup. Like this area stood out to me, area underneath here, and then potentially some of this area underneath here. Because the rest of the surfaces, I don't mind because there's a lot going on, right? So for example, this one, I can't really see or like notice any big patterns, so that's fine. So yeah. So that's number 3. So more breakup on the surfaces, and also this is a big one for post-processing. Try to infuse the scene with a more dirty green colors, like smoky dirt-filled clouds. You know, like Because this is very gray, but this is vile, you know? Like the clouds that we're seeing here, and also how they subtly contrast with like all the orange in the scene. Really cool. That would be really, really interesting to introduce in the scene. That we get some of that vile, putrid kind of look into the scene. That would be sick. Oh, and then also, God, like maybe try to find a car. I kind of feel like these cars would add so much, you know? I'm just gonna I'm just gonna keep it like this, you know? Number 5 is find a car. That's it. Because I feel like once you have a car, I don't know, like I'm thinking Fab Marketplace, right? I'm thinking that even if it's like a pristine car, if you kind of find something that fits the style, you can then just like kit bash into something else, make the materials really rusty, and then replace. What did I do here? Yeah, just like bolt some pipes on it. You know, bolt some pipes on the underground, and then that's it. Because honestly, that's what they did here too. And then once you have one, you're good to go, right? Because now you can just change like the colors on them, kit bash them a little bit more. And that will add a lot. Having these like cars fly through the scene would be sick. But yeah, that depends on if you have the time, because I think there might be a deadline, right? Not sure. Maybe increasing the light intensity or light rays, is Burak saying. Yeah, potentially. Like if we compare it to the buildings here, it feels like there's a starker contrast between like this building here, right, and then the rest of it. The rest is like very dark, dreary, like almost like not lit. And then something like that. Yeah, I was thinking, if I decide to do cars, that's gonna be for extra polishing phase. That's totally fine. The actual submission is very soon. Yeah. So, like, number 5 is like that is more optional, right? Little star, little asterisk. And then number 6, what we talked about was like slightly increasing the contrast, right? Like we talked about here. Cool. Yeah, Sergio, like awesome stuff. Love to see this. Best of luck with the submission as well. Oh, there was one thing here that I forgot. I guess number 7 then. There's a bunch of like these generic cables that kind of just follow the roof. I would try to reduce them because they kind of just look like they're not made for a purpose. You know, they're just like dangling there. Where these guys, they're awesome because you can kind of see that they're attached to the building. They serve a purpose. Those are good. It's like these guys, like, I don't know. It feels like they're just hanging there. Small thing, but yeah. Cool, Sergio. Thank you so much. Right, we gotta put some speed into this. I didn't realize that it was almost 10 o'clock already. Jesus. Let's see. Liz is next. Liz, Top G, and then V. Hello, Liz. We got an overpaint ready for ya. Your main question was about composition, right? So when it comes to your composition, I think you could potentially keep the same one that you have now. But we need to add some more elements to it to make it more interesting. So yeah, what I thought of is I was leaning into maybe potentially making it like more secluded, you know? And the foreground elements can actually add a lot in the scene. So I'm thinking like if I'm thinking maybe more secluded, I'm thinking about like putting like trees in the foreground, something that's like obscuring like our view into this space a little bit more. And then also potentially, I don't know, one of those like boats that you see on like what are they called? Like in the swamps in Louisiana, you know? Something like that going on. That could be a really interesting foreground element. And they're usually pretty simple. So that could be interesting. Or you could kit bash one together from stuff that already exists in your scene anyway. Maybe we could use this boat as a foreground element. Like another boat? Yeah, potentially. I just noticed that we could potentially use this boat too. No, I guess then we're trying to sell. So this is like their emergency boat, you know? Because what this kind of signals is that we're almost like it feels like we are arriving into the scene, right? And it kind of adds to the story of the whole scene. This could be really, really cool. And then just in the foreground, like more reeds. You know, like those stereotypical like reeds could be pretty interesting. Right. I just made like a bunch of like random notes, right? So we talked about this one, like we are arriving, could be cool. We talked about that so that we are coming into the scene. Another idea that I had is more for the background, but it's like showcasing why like these two are disconnected. That is because the bridge collapsed, right? So we can then show with like a bunch of sticks still in the water that like there was a bridge at some point, but now it's no longer there, right? So we are showing that at a certain point there was something there, but now it's gone. And then I think the second question, let me read through your Discord. Liz. Yeah, right now I have temporary suggestions. Do you have suggestions to improve them on my final pass? Yeah, so I made a bunch of notes here. I hope that you can read. They're pretty generic, as in these are like the things that I basically tell everyone to do, right? For the most part. Whenever I think about like, okay, how can I take my texturing further? It's thinking about things like the wear and tear, right? Like where's most damage going to be appearing, right? So for example, if there's already planks resting against it, that means that like a bunch of like the underside is probably going to be damaged from like just repairs and water damage and all that kind of stuff, right? Or maybe even like people bumping into it or putting the tools against it, and then you can kind of visually showcase that. Already hinted at it, but like influenced by the weather, it's a big one, or like influenced by nature, let's say. So the weather can be a big one, but also like this is a wooden rusted thing built on water, right? That's gonna have a big effect because moisture is gonna have a big effect on firstly the wood and then also the metal as well, right? And what that means, for example, is that you already have a lot of rust, right? But think about where the water collects on those surfaces, right? Because that water is going to drip down into these crevices, and it's basically going to gather down here. Which means just because all that moisture collects, that is where we're going to see the most rust, right? Because those parts of the metal are going to be most affected by that moisture. And then that kind of rusted metal is kind of going to leave streaks. So that's also going to have an effect in certain areas where you can incorporate that into your texturing. And then the same sort of like weathering is also going to happen on the planks, right? Where looking at like the planks, like there's going to be a lot of moisture that's going to be trapped in like all those little crevices. Yeah. influenced by the weather or by nature. And then I would suggest finding like really good references to improve. I would honestly look for old wooden dock, like old metal sheets, like stuff like that, you know, like just add old or vintage or I don't know, something like that in it. Shazar is saying maybe showing the weight of the structure. Has it started giving in on one side and sunk into the riverbed more? That could be an interesting one as well. So, for example, you're already doing that with the sheets here, which is like pretty cool. Let me actually hide some of this. So we're actually seeing that the sheets are kind of like bent and like hand carved, right? But what if we do this sort of thinking, but then we also like slightly do that like on these beams as well, so that we can kind of see that these beams are like handmade as well. Or like Sergeant said, like maybe even an easy thing to do would be like if we look at the docks, right? That the docks are sort of just like, I don't know, maybe there's like a little dip in the docks. And then maybe the docks at the end is kind of just like fallen into the water or something like that. Broken or, yeah, like broken or sunken or, you know, like just again, like damaged by being near the water for such a long time. And I'm assuming that they don't really have the means to repair it like all that well. So it could be a cool one. Because also like it's the reason why I like this so much is because it integrates the object more into the environment, right? It it feels more integrated. It doesn't feel like it's separated from its environment at this point, which is really, really cool. Plus, the additional benefit that we get as like artists is that we get to change the silhouette and make the whole object itself more interesting as well. Yeah. Oh my god, there's a lot of scribbles on this page. Sorry, Liz. But yeah, those were my suggestions for this week. There's a bunch of cool stuff that you can do with this. Yeah, have fun with it. I love it. It's just, yeah, it's a kid's drawing at this point. Yeah, and like find good references for all of this, right? Like really have a look at there's some beautiful references for people living on the bayou. I saw a documentary about this from like a guy who travels around in like America and other places, and he went to visit like people in the bayou. Oh my god. You can see like the state that they live in, and also like how they maintain like all this. Like it's really, really cool. Getting late here. Good night, everyone. Thanks, Sergio. Thanks for popping in. And again, thank you, Liz, for showing this as well. This is looking really cool. Yeah, awesome stuff. I really want to make this look like Louisiana. Yeah, I would honestly like look at some of the stereotypical things that they do there, right? And then maybe see if you can infuse those tropes into the scene as well. So for example, like maybe, I mean, this is the first thing that I'm thinking about without any visual reference, right? But like you could almost make it like that some of the old buildings that were on the road before, they got repurposed into this building. So like one of the wooden planks is like an old Coca-Cola sign or something like that, you know? Like something like that. Like it's very, I don't know, it tells you something about the area around it. Mosquitoes flying? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. God, I can't imagine living there. I will be eaten alive. Okay. Who was next? I think it was V, right? Oh no, actually not. Stop G and then V. So we are already here. Oh, yes. So here we go to the question, right? Because the first question was, I want to get feedback on my cinematic regarding how long it should be. I'm doing a 10-second pan in, as you can see, and I'm wondering if I actually should keep panning in closer to the booth and make it more 20 secs. So here is my main, let me show you this as well. Switch it over really quick. So it looks really cool, like visually, right? But it makes me wonder, like, what is this doing that we're not already seeing in the still images, right? That's what I'm thinking of. Like, what is the value add of me watching this video compared to the static images? So usually the way that it's done, right, is that if you have a lot of movement or if something is happening or the storytelling or let's say you have the day scene, which is like clean-ish, let's say it's recently abandoned, and then the night scene is where it gets like more destroyed, right? Something like that to like give us a little bit of like a progression of time or something, right? It's a value add on top of the static images. Because in this case, I don't really see the added value, right? It's a completely different thing if you have to do it for school, right? And then it's honestly just like, hey, just do a little checkbox, you know, you've done it. That's great. If you probably want to show off more, like you could have some detail shots of certain areas that you like. Maybe we're zooming in on, I don't know, areas that you really enjoy. There are birds that passes by in the back. I don't know if that's detectable. I didn't notice, so I don't think so. The best example of passing of time is the ending of Gangs of New York, if you need a reference. Oh my god. That is a reference that I haven't heard in a while. Chase! Let me check if we can see the bird. Let's switch it over again. Because I did not notice. Oh my god! Are you talking about... You're talking about these tiny dots here? I mean, that's barely visible. Is it happening in the night scene as well? Because the thing is, like, it is... I don't know if I'm biased about this, because what I do like, and what I've always enjoyed, oh, switch it on this. What I've always enjoyed is so at night you see it at the other window. Yeah, I mean honestly, like if you wouldn't have told me, I wouldn't have noticed. Like honestly, I think if you want to have those effects, you want to make them bigger. What I was gonna say is that I've always loved like just like very slow panning videos of like abandoned places. So this is where something that I'm really biased towards. Even with my comments from before, right? Yeah, so I would think about that. Maybe give us something more interesting. Like maybe switch up the camera angles. I don't know, zoom in on like things that you like from the scene, different angles, all that kind of stuff, right? For the cinematic specifically. And then the rest of it is fine for the scene. That's what I said here, right? So what is the value of your cinematic? Like it needs to add on top of the images, right? So that's usually where there's movement, where there's story or something additional to it, right? And then the second question was, this is my asset presentation so far, and I was wondering on the albedo, roughness, buffer shots in general, and I need to show the other angles of my scene, or is one enough? Yeah, so let's break that down, right? So first of all, the buffer shots. I don't know if I in general like want to see detailed lightings, but I do know that other people recommend having them in. So I don't know, I guess I don't mind. These ones definitely look better. Like the cloudy scene. Because what we have here is we have like a bunch of clipping values. What that means is that because this is like obviously like a white surface in this view, like I can't distinguish between elements within certain sections of the scene, and the same is happening here as well. Like the highlight basically gets blown out because it is so strong. All the color information is gone. Yeah, it's just reduced to white, basically, right? So there's no sense of different values there, which is why this one might seem less interesting than this one from like a technical aspect, right? So if you're gonna use one of them, I would definitely use like the top one. But I think your intuition was definitely right there. And then, do you need to show like other angles of your scene, or is one enough? Well, this captures all the information, right? So I don't think you actually need to show like any other sections in your scene necessarily. So yeah, that's also what I said here again, right? So are more views needed? Like not necessarily, but if you have really cool details, it could be interesting. I was trying to simulate the harsh lighting for the sunny one, but I will tone it down. Yeah, like we need to be able to distinguish like from like a lighting perspective, right? And again, I'm not like a lighting expert here. I'm not a lighting artist by trade. We want to make sure that like it's still readable. But hey, here's the good thing, OBG. Like if you are not going to be using that one anyway, you don't have to do any adjustments, right? Like if you're just going to be using the top section here, this one, then we're all good. Saves you some time. But yeah, that was it, right? And yeah, then you added like shots for the presentation as well. I think the presentation looks good. I like it. This one is cool as well. This one is cool. Get a little bit of contrast in there as well. Yeah. Awesome. I like it. Good stuff, man. DS is saying, hey, how long before someone signs up for the portfolio review? Like, how long is the line? That is a very good question because I'm not doing portfolio reviews anymore. It's been a while, actually. So, yeah, the line is going to be pretty long. Yeah, no, I stopped doing portfolio reviews like a while back. But yeah, for cinematics, I will add more shots to try a thing or something. Yeah, I mean that could be a good thing. Like try to fill it up, try to give more additional shots for the cinematic. I think that would be a good thing. Cool. Thanks, OG. All right, and I think that was the end of the queue, right? God, I keep forgetting about you, V. No. All right, so V. So you were mainly asking about like animated ad screens and billboards in the sci-fi environment, right? What would be like the most efficient way to achieve those effects? So, that's a good question. The most efficient way. I don't think it would be like the most efficient way. But I would honestly just think that like doing like pre-rendered videos or something like that would be the easiest for me. But that is with the tools that I'm used to using, right? Because for example, if we want to do like simple transitions, the tool that we, for example, use to do presentations and all our social media stuff has like animations built in from the get-go, even if you make like static images. So if you just want to do like, I don't know, like a slow pan or like stuff pops up the screen and like stuff like that, which is like very ad driven, right? I would then just like build a couple of those, render them out as like an MP4 or whatever, and then just like add them in that way. That's probably going to be the easiest thing. And then once you have that base, then you can add stuff on top of it where, like, let's say the screen got damaged, it's partially destroyed, all that kind of stuff, right? It is honestly very similar to the way that I was doing the screens in my last environment, which is like ages ago now. Like, for example, if we look at this little screen over here, right, that is just like a static image. And then on top of it, what I did, this was all made in Blender, right? So it's not Unreal. Like, what I did was I just played around with like a bunch of, I think it was like a bunch of levels, and I just inverted the colors and all that kind of stuff. And it just looked like it was like vandalized, right? Because it looked like a broken screen. But that is still just using like the base image like underneath it, as you can see with the other ones. And I just made those into like static images with like an emissive. Those like didn't even like animate. But yeah, right now, if I were to do them again, I would use like a tool like Canva or something like that to like really quickly like animate them and then just have them in like a little movie. Because from what I know, if you make like those movies emissive, they also go into like a GI and all that kind of stuff. So you can get some like really, really cool effects with those now. That would be the way that I would do it. So like create them outside of Unreal. Canva is super easy. And then use them as movie props. And then you can, yeah, exactly. You can do like those effects like on top of it, right? Like a glitch effect, like a broken effect, maybe like, I don't know, a broken screen, all that kind of stuff. That gets added on top of it. Like I was saying here, right? Like any broken, flickering, or like any additional layers, they would get done in the material using the input that we talked about. Because yeah, like sometimes, yeah, you could use Figma. Potentially, like, I don't know too much about Figma. I mean, my partner uses it, but like I just like the way that like Canva does it because it kind of has it built in. So for example, I'll show you some stuff here. So let's say if I just pick like one of our random things, right? Which one do we take actually? I guess workshops, and then we just go to like an older workshop. And we'll just full screen this. Let's actually switch to this other screen. So in this one, this is for like a workshop that we had in the past, right? Like I can just like select the whole thing and just be like, okay, animate. It has like a bunch of animations on top of it already. And if I then go to, what is it again? Pages, timer, no. Why can I not? Of course, now that I want to show it off, like it starts freaking out, huh? Why can I not open this though? Anyway, let's see. So with this one, like it kind of has like a bunch of like animations built in, right? So if you want to do like really simple stuff like this, and this is just like I've selected everything and I'm just doing like one animation on everything, right? And it does like all the sorting for you, and you can tweak it to your heart's content. But it's really, really easy to do like very, very interesting stuff with this. Mateo, yeah, I saw the post. We're gonna have a look at it. Don't worry. Yeah, that's really easy to set something up like this, right? If you want to just have like movement like that. And then I added like a couple of other things here. This is just more. I love what you're doing with the scene already. An easy An easy way to add more interest to the scene is to then think about, like, instead of having like a straight line, how can we break up that straight line, right? Because right now we have like a bunch of straight lines already. So what I did with like a quick thinking here was like, oh, if we make this into a parking spot, right? So imagine like a car being here, and then like a little slanted edge here, and then like a little garbage can. We can start filling up this scene, and then we have like even a little space for like a little ad sign here or something like that, right? And that makes the scene already feel more interesting because I'm trying to break up like all like equal lines, right? Like as soon as there's too many lines that go into the same direction, I try to break them up as much as I can. So yeah, there we go. And then the last thing that I'll say is like, I don't know what you were thinking about putting these, but I just wanted to make a quick note that this feels more for like an interior than for an exterior. So I just wanted to say that real quick. Right, cool. But yeah, good job on the scene though. I feel like the way that you compose it now, it starts to feel like a real scene now. Like we're pulling everything together. Everything is becoming more cohesive. I like what's going on. So, great stuff. No worries. Right, I'm probably going to do this one first because I didn't make notes of it. Well, same thing for Lily's one, actually. Got to go. Glad to help, peeps. Good luck on your scenes. Yeah, thanks for popping in, Shazar, and helping. That was awesome. Thank you for all the suggestions, and I hope you have a good evening. All right, next scene from Stefan. Two questions. How are you feeling about the lighting in the plant? First off, I like the plant. The plant looks really nice. It also really adds into the theme really nicely, right? So I do really like the plant. And especially it being dead or like wilting, right? It kind of adds to the whole like sadness to the scene. So I really like that thought process. So that was good. And then the lighting kind of feels like it's super flat. So I tried to do some experiment here. I don't know if it's worth it, but what I tried is, I hope you can see that. Let me here. What I was trying to do is I was trying to infuse some color contrast into the scene. And it kind of ended up giving me this like old school look where like if we do a before and an after, you can kind of see that around the edges in the vignette, I try to infuse more blue colors. So yeah, you can kind of see that it hopefully gives more depth to the scene, and it kind of felt like it added like this old school like feel to it as well. So yeah. Because it also does a great job of then again like reinforcing the center of the scene again, right? So yeah. I hope that helped a little bit. It would be something to experiment with, right? Yeah, that's the thing that I was thinking about the light. It still feels, I don't know, it feels a little weird that like we have such a strong light here, but then I'm not really seeing the light source all too much. But I don't know if we can actually do something against that. Maybe, maybe what we could do on the main light, having like a very soft, like, what is this called again? Light function. Like I'm almost imagining, let's imagine that we're looking for the top down, and then you have some of those like lamps that have like the segments in them, right? I'm almost imagining that if this is the top down for your lamp, right? I'm imagining like one of those like beautiful like old school lamps, right? That kind of has like a like an inverted mushroom or something like that. So I'm imagining that this could be like the light, like casting like a slight shadow where you have these braces in the lamp. And that is like the main light. It kind of is like a very subtle shadow. Maybe that could be a way to like indicate that there is something above it. I don't know. I'm just honestly spitballing ideas now. Cool. And then for the second part, you were working on this little lace, I guess, right? Like a lace kind of cloth kind of stuff. And you were talking about like how you should add more geo so that the cloth follows the shape on the desk. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Like honestly, what I thought of is that I wanted to see like more curls, right? So that you have a section here that then just like kind of watch me draw like lace. You get what I mean? Like those like nice folds that you get from like certain patterns, right? So that could be really, really nice to like accentuate some of these areas here. Like, and it's going to be very subtle, right? For example, like on this corner, we're definitely going to see some of the stretching of the edges. But it could be like a really nice way to just like accentuate like certain elements to make it look really, really nice by adding more geo. So I totally agree. I totally agree. If we're gonna add more geo, this would be like a nice way to spend it and make it look real nice. Cool. Thanks, Stefan. And then let's actually, what should we do first? Have a look. I don't think I've ever looked at Lily's or like the team challenge one. Okay, let's do the team challenge last because I did say that was gonna happen, right? So the next one is from Carabao. Let's have a look. And then 2 questions for the candle sword. I'm struggling with this fabric and figuring out how to flow, how it should blow in the wind. It will be a static mesh. Although opening to changing that. So I would love some direction on how to do this fabric. As to me, the 2 tassels in tangent don't feel right. Concept included. We're talking about these guys, right? So I think what I really like about the concept is that you kind of follow the same flow. You kind of follow the same flow, but they kind of diverge around the edges, right? So I feel like we need to try to somehow replicate that where then also maybe we can do something where we go from like slimmer to thicker, right? Be a bit more expressive with it as well. Sometimes it's fun to have like to be more expressive with the flow of these. And I also do like that it kind of flails out or becomes bigger at the end or something like that. It does add to the silhouette of it, right? Let's see. Because it's very, yeah, you have to be very specific about the shapes that you create, right? Because I think this one just doesn't really flow nice, like especially at the end. So I don't know if I'm taking some inspiration from the concept, almost like breaking up silhouette a bit. Let's have a look. I do actually like what that does here. So where it goes thinner, but then it has like the broken fabric. Yeah, so I guess it's just going to be more about like shape experimentation, right? Where you want to play with like the width of certain elements and how that contrasts between each other. And then also like the flow of it too, right? Like that's kind of what we did here, where like it kind of like flows out. And then it like sprays open a little bit. And then this one flows out the other way. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting keeping these looking good and consistent, because like in here they kind of flay out like a bit too much, right? So you kind of want to do something like this where you still keep them as one unit, because like right here it kind of feels like it flows too much in on itself. Yeah. It's not looking too bad though. Like oh, maybe this is something to point out as well. Like that these transitions are like too sharp. Perhaps. Let's have a look at the concept again. Yeah, because the concept like it stays away from like being like too sharp in transitions, right? Or it's more, if it does a sharp transition, I guess it does it in like a visual way as well. Where like it has like a nice flow and then it kind of goes like, ooh. Right, so yeah, the contrast between shapes as well, I guess. Where you have like a sharp edge, but then like a nice rounded surface like next to it too. So that would mean that like, I guess it's what you're trying to do here, now looking at it. But maybe that's where this becomes too long, right? Because you have like a nice flowy edge here. And then I would expect like the sharpness to enter here. And then we're doing something more like this, right? Good night, Burak. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I hope you're doing well. So yeah. I mean, yeah. There's not too much to say here. Just more ideas thrown around, like sharp versus soft shapes. I'm trying to keep that in mind as well. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, and then I think the difficulty with this is that you have to kind of, because the easy thing here is that this is one angle, right? And that's easy. So you would almost have to look at it from, okay, what is going to be your preferred angle to look at? And then I'm going to focus all the attention to that. And then this, let's say this maybe doesn't look as good, but that's okay because that's not going to be the main angle anyway, right? So yeah. Try to focus more on like your intended angle, and that's maybe going to make it easier for you as well. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your work. Looking really awesome. Keep up the great work. And then last but not least, this is actually one of our team challenges. So a special team challenge. So this is a team of 5 people that are currently going through like all the team challenges. Just to showcase it for people that have not seen this, let me showcase on our lovely community. We have this challenge going on right now. And let's actually show what people have been up to. Because this is all from like the first week progress. So people are building their blockouts, they're getting their ideas in, and this is what has currently been built. So Team 13, Team 2, Team 3, Team 6. Teams are doing great so far? Yeah, teams are doing really good so far. I like... So my main worry with the team challenges, I guess with every time that we do them, is how varied the outcome is going to be. And this was like our most specific thematic ever, right? Because it's Witch's Den. So it's like, it seems like it's very specific already. But people are coming up with like really interesting ideas and like variations on the topic, which is amazing to see. So I love some of the stuff that is happening. Yeah, really, really cool stuff happening. I love it. There's so many teams as well. We unfortunately had one of the teams drop out already, but we still have like 15 teams left in the running. It's cool. Yeah, teams are going to be kicking ass. Yes, and then this is the last one as well. I don't think I've seen this one yet. This one's really cool. Yeah. Some really, really cool stuff happening. I'm honestly really excited. Like, I know that we don't really like do these in like a public manner, right? Like we used to. For example, we did used to do like live streams like in the middle to showcase like people's projects. We don't do that anymore. But yeah, it is really cool to showcase what people are doing. So I guess now you just have to wait until the end and see what people are going to be up to. Slade is asking, how much time do the teams have to finish their project? So they have 5 weeks from start to finish, which is, it's not easy. So the first week is pre-production and then 4 weeks of actual production. So currently we're in the middle of week 2, which is going to be the first actual production week. So the stuff that you've seen right now was like at the end of the first week, where they have to deliver a block out, and they have to provide us an asset list and all that kind of stuff. And keep in mind, these are like 5 random people. Most of the cases have never even talked to each other apart from inside of the community, that get put into a team and then just like, hey, look, have fun, you know? Obviously with a bunch of support, but yeah, it is crazy that like random people across the entire world get together to make like beautiful environments like this. It was really exciting. So that's what we're talking about today. So let's have a look. Have a look at what team. Which team is this again? Have a look. Team number 1. Let's see. So any questions? So we have 2 questions. Do you have any feedback on the proportions of the house in the environment, and are the props in proper scale with the house? Yeah, it does look like it. I mean, it's good that we're already doing tests, right? So we have like these guys over here. That are great. Honestly, that is the best way to test scale, is just throw this sucker around in your scene and see if that works. Then if we were to zoom out to the whole house. Yeah, I do feel like everything is like in the correct proportions. I think I'm seeing if I can find like an outliner, or like, Because sometimes you can see the scale in front of you, right? And you have these scale references, but sometimes you might just have the feeling that it might be nice to make something like bigger or smaller, right? Where I was potentially thinking that this house feels potentially too big. Like, it makes sense from, like, if we look at the door proportions, right? But, like, it is a huge, like, house. So yeah, that's the thing. I don't think it's necessarily about proportions. I think the proportions are correct, right? Proportionate to the characters. It's more a question of if the team is actually happy with how big the size of the house is, if that makes sense, right? I think that's also a good question to ask too, because proportionally, everything makes sense. And are the props in proper scale with the house? Yep. Yeah, because like we trust the same thing here, right? So that's all good. That's all good. Question 2 is we got more props in the concept art to still add into the environment. Do you have any feedback on the storytelling, lighting, and the composition? So storytelling, lighting, or the composition. I mean, I feel like honestly, lighting is probably the weakest at this point. Again, it's week 1, right? So I would probably want to draw more focus towards not the foreground, because it seems like there's some lighting going on in the foreground, but then the actual thing that we want to be focusing on doesn't have as much light as a foreground. So we could potentially use more light on the main element and kind of shift whatever intensity and lights that we have in the foreground is just more focused on midground, right? So that would be the main thing, to get more focus on the house, or like think about like how you're going to add more focus, right? Because it can be light coming in, it can be the house shining light in some way, it can be, I don't know, emissive coming from like the shroom itself, it can be like lit up mushrooms next to the building, it can be a whole bunch of things, but I just expect more light to be around the actual light, the actual main focal point is seen. Especially if we're looking at the concept, right? It seems like the rest of the scene is supposed to be dark, hidden, mysterious. And then this is sort of like a light in that sea of darkness, right? And then what we can do, we can still balance all these additional lights though. Like these lights, they can still be emissive, but they need to be secondary to the main scene. So this is going to be the thing that's going to capture the attention, and then this is going to be more additional, right? Like these guys. And then on the storytelling, it would be good to add more. This is like the base template, right? I'm not too sure what's happening there yet. Like questions like, so if we look at the story, right? Like what witch is here? Or like who, I guess, right? In this case, like who lives there? What kind of witch? What do they do? Are they good or evil? Etc. Right? Like thinking about those like character-driven questions can give you an indication of what other assets you need into your scene. And in the composition, I mean, it is a pretty straightforward composition, and potentially you could do something more with your foreground, right? Where it's almost like you could honestly do something like this, where we are standing on like a slight hill, and we are looking into the scene, and in the scene, this is almost like stereotypical Disney, right? And then the scene kind of has like multiple ways of like guiding you into it, right? That could potentially be like an option. So like this becomes more of a foreground element. And then potentially the way that I always like to construct scenes is I kind of find that like a centered composition, which is what's happening here, right? Kind of just leads to, I don't know, something that's not that enticing to look at, right? So for example, what we could do is imagine that we have like the same scene setup roughly, right? Then if we have like a path that kind of goes down into like this valley, into like our mushroom kingdom or whatever. And then instead of like, because from the top down now, what we created is like we have, I mean, sort of have this, right? This is where the camera is, that's where the house is, and then we've built like an arena. Whereas even if we were just to angle the camera, and this is what we're seeing, and then we have like a path that kind of leads you into the scene more. And this is, like if we look at the camera, this is going to be something more like this. It makes it more dynamic, right? And then we kind of can place like, you can see more of the tree line, maybe we can do some more set dressing, all that kind of stuff. It makes it just like a little bit more dynamic. But I'll let the team decide on that, right? Because it's the team decision. And then the last question, Matteo, should we develop more of the block out and add more elements to the composition, or should we focus on high priority tasks and think about the details in the composition later? Oh no, you definitely want to get your composition right at this point. Your composition and honestly getting all the elements in shouldn't take too long time. Getting all the elements in, honestly, in a block out at this point, you should have a good idea of what you want to add, right? So modeling like a couple of props and just throwing them into the scene is like a single person, like 2 hours work or something like that. Slapping it in there, and then at least you know what is going to be in the scene, and then you can kind of cut down from that later, right? But we need to get the composition right, because we don't want to go back and forth on the composition, because let's say whenever we change the composition, we also invalidate potentially someone's work, right? Because maybe they were working on trees that now are no longer going to be visible, or maybe they're working on an area of the house that's no longer going to be visible. So that means that they lost a bunch of work, right? That's why we try to lock in the camera early, so that everyone knows exactly what needs to be done, and that we can focus on that. So yeah. You want to focus on your composition and your camera. Sort of quote unquote lock that down. The reason why I say quote unquote is because you can do smaller changes to your composition, right? But I don't want to see big changes like in the near future. So bring up these bigger questions now, and I think that's going to be very helpful. Is it the latest, by the way? Oh no, that's the latest. Okay. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just a quick little round of feedback here to one of our team challenge groups. But yeah, good stuff, Team 1. Keep it up. It was interesting seeing this. Yeah, best of luck during the challenge. And thank you for coming in here and supporting, Matteo. Appreciate it. Slate has to go. Thank you for the questions and being here, Slate. Always appreciate it. And good stuff, man. Good stuff on your project. Matteo saying thank you very much, Tim. No worries. No worries. Happy to help. All right. Cool. I am also not going to make it too long. So I'm just going to say thank you, everyone, for being here. As always, it's always a pleasure hanging out, honestly. Even though we talk about like very deep topics in the beginning, which I generally do really enjoy. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Keep following for all the updates on the course that we're doing. I'm probably gonna be sharing more about those like in the near future. Yeah, we just need to come up with a plan to do that, right? But hopefully we can show more of those of those courses in the future, because there's going to be a lot of them that are going to be in production now, which is really, really exciting. And also, again, thank you all so much for making that happen. It's because of you that we can actually build all this content, right? That I can put this on my priority list and like take this full time and do all this crazy stuff that we're doing now. Like, thank you so much for making it happen, honestly. One last question for WG. I have another question regarding my stuff. Should I showcase my textures? Yes. Yeah. Textures, wireframes, poly counts, UVs. Those are the things that you should showcase. Honestly, we have a playlist on our Beyond Extend YouTube that is just called portfolio reviews. A lot of the same information goes in those reviews, so they're still relevant. Just check those out. That's going to be super helpful because I talk a lot about how to present your work and stuff. Yeah, but that's going to be it from me today. For people that participated today, you'll see those overpaints be popping into your individual threads in just a little bit. And yeah, I wish you all a nice evening.